Thank you for being here. Welcome to this program of the University of Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center. We're so pleased to be able to bring you these educational tools and to help support small businesses. If you don't know about the Small Business Development Center, it's a one-stop shop for startups and existing small businesses. We're associated with the University of Arkansas and affiliated with the statewide ASB TDC and SBA. We are also part of a national network of more than 1,000 small business centers. Locally, we offer complimentary one-on-one consulting and programs covering the relevant topics for business owners. And if you're not already a client, we certainly encourage you to visit us at the website on the slide at sbtdc.uark.edu and just click Get a Consultation, or feel free also to send us an email at sbdc.uark.edu. And again, you can find all those websites and emails on the slide. Thank you. Again, welcome. I'm Allyson Malone, and I'm an HR consultant with the ASB TDC, and I specialize in human resources topics and really all things people related. So, of course, that is a topic for today. We're going to be talking about really setting up the HR function. So we'll start that with job descriptions. Really, business owner, maybe you've been going it alone for a while, or really you're to a place where finally you're thinking, it's time to get some help. Maybe you've had your family kind of pitching in for a while and it's just not doing the trick anymore, that you've really kind of grown beyond that. Or maybe you're just to the place where you can't wear all the hats anymore. Or you're just concluded that there really are only 24 hours in a day, so it's time to get some help. Or maybe you're a step further than that and you actually have hired some folks already, and you're just playing catch up on that job description. It's all okay. Generally, I would suggest for most of my clients that you would want to have a job description before you hire anyone. I recommend creating the job description, again, before you bring someone on board, but it's really never too late. So you may be wondering, what's a job description? What belongs on a basic job description? It really is basically a useful, plain language tool that explains tasks, duties, functions, and work responsibilities for a particular position. It details who might perform a specific type of work, how that work is to be completed, what hours and that sort of thing, the frequency and the purpose of the work as it relates to your organization's mission and goals. Job descriptions can be used for a variety of reasons. There's a fairly long list from anywhere from demonstrating your organizational culture to determining salary levels to writing performance reviews, clarifying mission. If you are a bigger organization, you might have pay grades. And it really is also used as just a jumping off tool for your recruiting. It's helpful for training, career planning, all sorts of things. But for me, I find the main reason a job description is necessary really is to set expectations. So employees understand what is expected of them in their role, what their job responsibilities are, and how, your organization will measure performance against that job description. I just can't overemphasize enough the importance of setting expectations. I've had many jobs in my career, and I've certainly learned, one thing I've learned is not every job is for every person. So I have found that, some places are a better fit than others for employees. I certainly have found that the more clearly you articulate your expectations up front, the better for all parties involved. That you will open that conversation to have a two-way conversation about what you expect out of the role, and your employees will have a really good sense of what that job entails so they can meet your expectations. A quick set of things that you'll find in a job description. The very first section would be an overview, and it's just a summary at a very high level of what the role is. And then from there, you'll see some job descriptions include things like the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be successful in that position. If there are physical aspects to the job, bending, standing, lifting, all those sorts of things, those would be noted in a job description. And really the required experience or education, or in some cases credentials that might be needed to perform a particular job. The one thing I would say about job descriptions are that you will see various shapes and sizes of job descriptions out there in the world. You just want to pick one format and use that format uniformly for every position you have. They should all look the same and be organized in the same manner for all your different roles. I guess I would say really to that last bullet that if you don't have a job description, really you can anticipate a couple headaches. That if you don't take the time to create and discuss the job descriptions honestly and openly, I think what you'll see are some misaligned expectations. You'll see confusion and ultimately frustration on both parts. You as a business owner or leader will be frustrated that you're not getting the performance you want, and your employee will be frustrated that they don't know what it is they're supposed to be doing. So I can't emphasize enough, the best way to avoid this headache really is to set clear expectations up front. You're not really doing either party any favors by not being upfront and honest. Okay, on to our next topic here is paperwork and compliance. Probably not the topic that sounds the most exciting, but it is critical. And it is sort of a must-do and a basic business necessity. The first place I'll start with, and again, paperwork and compliance, really those are just the legal basics that you need to have in place for your employees. The first one is the I-9, and probably one of the most important documents. We will include in our notes a sample I-9 form. It is a government form, and just there are a few categories that the employee fills out and a few categories that the employer fills out. But it is important that no matter what size your company or organization is, that you have a completed I-9 on every employee, and it just confirms their eligibility to work in the United States. Employees complete Section 1. They present acceptable documents, and the documents are listed on one of the pages of the I-9, and it's one document from column A, and that's all you need, or a document from column B and column C. And really the main thing I would say on these various documents, like your passport, social security card, driver's license, all those things, I would just show the document to your employee or your future employee and tell them, hey, I need one from column A or something from column B and C. And they choose. It is not for you to say, hey, I need your driver's license and your social security card. That's probably one of the main keys with the I-9 form. You do not need to keep a copy of the IDs that you have taken. And the other key with the I-9 form is to store it in a secure location, a locked drawer, a file cabinet. There's confidential information on these I-9s. And this is only for U.S. employees. It is not something you would fill out on independent contractors or if you happen to have an employee working overseas. So that's the nuts and bolts on the I-9. Next, we have the W-4, and this really is your IRS federal tax withholding form. You need it for every employee who's on your payroll. There's a federal form and a state form. And my main piece of guidance there is as you're hiring people, just make sure you get the newest form. And really that goes for the I-9 as well. Just pull, a 2020 if there's not a 2021 form, but look for the most current form. That's really it with your W-4s. Again, secure them in a locked file cabinet or drawer. Next, we'll move on to the labor and employment posters. These are federal posters that are required from the U.S. Department of Labor. And you can look at their website, the Department of Labor's website, to determine which federal posters need to be displayed. And you can look at the Arkansas Department of Labor to see which are specific to Arkansas. Easy to find on the web. There's also many companies that offer what I would call like an all-in-one poster. And instead of tacking up, 10 or 15 various pieces of paper in your I don't know, your break room or over a copier or something like that. These companies will send you an all-in-one where all the things that you need, federal and state, are laminated. You tack it up. You probably need to look at that about once a year and make sure it's current. And that's about it with your labor and employment posters. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about are just various policies, procedures, an employee handbook. So really, first and foremost, we'll talk about our handbook. And it really is a way to document the company's compliance, first and foremost, with federal and state laws and regulations. And then it goes into sort of the specifics, the do's, the don'ts, the written rules of the road pertinent to your company. So you might see things like an equal employment opportunity statement or an EEO statement, harassment, anti-harassment and non-discrimination and non-retaliation policies are all critical to have at the beginning of your handbook. If you have 50 or more employees, you would have an FMLA or a Family and Medical Leave Act policy. If you don't, that law does not, it doesn't cover you. If you have 15 or more employees, you would have an American with Disabilities Act policy. You might have a religious accommodation policy. If you do background checks, if that's part of your organization, you would have a policy on that. And at the tail end of all of it, you would just have a contractual disclaimer that basically says something like, this handbook is not a contract for continued employment. We are an at-will state and an at-will employer, which basically means we can terminate you at any time as an employee and you are free to quit at any time. And finally, I do recommend that you have an acknowledgement section where the employee signs off at the bottom that he or she has read and agrees to the policies in the handbook. I highly recommend updating handbooks if you have one that you have created in the past. There were some new Supreme Court rulings in June of 2020 that protect gay and transgender workers from discrimination at a national level. Before that varied from state to state and local government to local government. So this is now a federal law. And then during the pandemic, many HR professionals and business owners really added policies about communicable diseases, which could include provisions for personal protective equipment, remote work where that makes sense, furloughs and layoffs. For some companies, those policies were temporary, and for some, the working remote policies, for example, or the personal protective equipment will likely remain in place on a more permanent basis. Depending upon the type of organization you are, you might want to consider work from home policies. Your company's equity, diversity, and inclusion policies are pretty critical to articulate. And then in addition to sort of some of those legal policies, depending upon the size of your organization and your culture, you could include all sorts of things like exempt and non-exempt schedules, breaks, how to track time. Do you have a timesheet? Do you have some sort of an app that your people go into to account for their time? Payroll procedures, how will they get paid? Direct deposit. If you have any benefits, a brief high-level overview of what those benefits include. Standards of conduct, what you will and will not accept in terms of behavior. A discipline policy. One thing I personally suggest strongly is that you don't have a progressive discipline policy where you commit to 2 verbal warnings, 3 written warnings, and a final warning before you're able to take any termination action. I just wouldn't call it out quite that specifically. You might have a policy on security, equipment usage, social media policies, confidentiality, what information that your organization holds that you would want your employees to keep confidential, and really a host of any other company-specific policies and information as needed, just depending upon what kind of business you have. And last but not least, I guess really the final point here is just this question that I receive quite often about, can I just copy a policy or a handbook, actually? Can I just copy a handbook that I see online? And I guess my caution to you would be no. don't, you might use that as a jumping off point, but I think company cultures are so different. I have worked for many startups that have a lighter, more informal culture. So copying a big corporate handbook wouldn't be the right voice and wouldn't be the right tone. And I think that your handbook is really a place to demonstrate, to highlight, to go over what your company culture is like. So if you have a very informal, lighthearted company culture, your policy should be worded and your handbook should have a lighter tone. If it is a more serious, formal organization, then you would have a more serious and formal handbook. If you are a company that doesn't need a dress code and doesn't do drug testing and has no need to drug test, those are policies that, the company that you might be copying their handbook might have in place that make no sense at your workplace. So, and I think one final note is sometimes with your employee handbook, if not all the time, less is more. Any policy that you have in your handbook is a policy that you as an organization must follow and comply with. So if you don't think you're going to follow a certain policy, certainly don't have it in your handbook. And I'll leave it there, and thank you.